Well, in our first story, the governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison, has emphasized the need for central banks in sub-Saharan Africa to coordinate monetary policy measures aimed to stabilize prices on the African continent. According to him, the impact of recent geopolitical tensions and the COVID-19 pandemic on developing countries underscored the need for increased harmonization of the monetary policy tools to withstand global shocks. There's more in this report.
Dr. Addison spoke at the Financial Stability Board meeting of the Regional Consultative Group for Sub-Saharan Africa in Accra. He observed that the inflation rate across countries in Sub-Saharan Africa stressed the need for African countries to work together in order to control price levels between countries. He maintained that such a move will enhance trade among African countries, reducing Africa's dependency on imports outside the continent.
The war in Ukraine has triggered a costly humanitarian and economic crisis. Global spillovers from the conflict is contributing adversely to sustaining the nascent recovery in global growth. It has already aggravated inflationary pressures, especially for fuel and food, and this elevated inflation will complicate the trade-offs that central banks face within the region between containing price pressures and safeguarding growth.
On his part, the governor of the South African Reserve Bank, Lesja Ganyango, stressed that African countries must immediately work together to bring inflation down on the continent.
Inflation, I am sure it will come so many at times. And when one has to ask what keeps central banks awake, and you will arrive at three issues. The first one would be inflation, the second one will be inflation, and the third one will be inflation. And that is actually what is confronting us, that we are now faced with this issue of global inflation. In our response to the pandemic, the response was speedy, it was to scale, but it was very clear that the measures that were taken were wartime measures, and that at some stage they would have to be withdrawn. As the global economy opened up and demand started to rise, it became clear that the supply chains could not cope with the rise in demand.